Sex podcast.
We're on the air, Freud.
It's so moist.
Such a classic.
Such a classic. Its days are numbered.
No, it's classic though. I cannot begin without it.
I know, it's true. Welcome to Functional Meatheads, everyone. I'm Mark DeSalvo.
And I'm Froilan Sanchez.
And we are back for another week of functional meatheadness. And particularly the meathead this week. Freud had a little bit of a head trauma incident, and I don't think I shared a few weeks ago. I think it actually happened while we were on vacation, or like podcast hiatus. But I had my own.
So it was when you were back here and I was on vacation.
Yeah, exactly. And so we've had in less than a month 2 concussions between us.
We could have died, Mark. We could have died.
Yeah. At least yours is happening in sport. Mine happened in the New York City subway system.
Which probably happens more often in New York than people playing dog sports or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's gonna take up most of our
What happened when you're doing the weird turnstile, which I always hate, those weird ones with all the bars?
Yes, exactly, the tall one. So I'll lead. I'll start this off. So basically, what happened was that I was I was at the Borough Hall station, the 4-5 train.
Shake Shack, son.
Yeah, by the Shake Shack in Brooklyn. So for our New York City listeners, you can kind of get a visual here. And one of the turnstiles there, it's the tall one. It's not the one that just comes up to your waist. It's the one that looks like you're in jail and goes up way past you.
Yeah. It's a bunch of rounded bars that go 6-7 feet tall and down.
Right. There's this one at that station that's famous for breaking, that at least 2-3 times a month you'll go down there during morning rush hour, or any time of the day for that matter, and you'll see someone repairing it because it's not working properly.
Wow.
So because it's just overused. It's at the most populated entrance to that station, and that's a popular station, and most of those numbered trains in New York City weren't built for the loads that they get of people. So anyway, oftentimes when you swipe your card at a turnstile, and if it failed to go through and you don't realize it, you'll walk up and the turnstile doesn't move. There's no give at all in it.
Yeah.
So
Somehow, but not many of them.
Yeah. So there's no give to it. So it's like you swipe your card, say it failed, and you don't realize it. You're just gonna walk into the thing. Usually you're not moving particularly fast. Whatever. It's like, oh, I didn't do it. Turn around, swipe again. You do it. Well, this one at Borough Hall is funky. That if you fail to swipe it, even if you fail to swipe it, you can move it a good almost 1.5 feet before it clicks. So, and it doesn't make a sound. So I swiped the card, and I thought it went through, and I move it, and I'm moving like at a full walking speed. I wasn't running or anything, but completely unguarded, not defending my head at all. And the thing moves 1.5 feet and stops, and I just walk head first, like right into it, and it hits me right in the forehead, like above the glasses. And I got a good big old bump there. And I iced the crap out of it, and I have to say it prevented like a hematoma or anything like that. So that was good.
But it could have broken your glasses and killed you.
Yeah, it could have been bad. So I had headaches for a few days, and I had to obviously take off of working out in jiu-jitsu, and I understand like the significance of head injuries. I had 1 or 2 when I played hockey, and if you like the sports that I like, you should take them seriously, especially the way the NFL claims to try but doesn't really, So it's it was pretty crappy. I had headaches for a few days, and they would be mostly related to the pain on that bump on my head. But I shut it down because that's what you have to do when you have head injuries. You have to just shut it down. You have to make sure you don't sleep excessively. Sleep on a normal schedule, but you have to just not do anything that could possibly induce further concussive blows because
I have to say, even though it sucks, it's very fascinating to think, like, okay, so basically, and I'm gonna paraphrase. It's like, okay, so the brain is repairing itself. It's either repairing itself or deciding to like, okay, I'm giving up on this. It's been damaged too bad.
Right.
So we're gonna rewire certain things to go around, and you're gonna lose certain things, right? But the fact that you feel nausea is fascinating to me because I played soccer. I headed the ball wrong, and I also like kind of didn't tense when I needed to tense, and I didn't feel it till I played around. This happened around 8 o'clock. I played for another hour, and I didn't feel any after effects until like 6, 5 or 6. It started as a light headache, and then it turned into like a light fever with like flu-like symptoms in the body.
Oh, you had it like that. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I started feeling like warm, and then I'm like, I feel kind of sick to my stomach. I was like, okay, maybe it's just coffee withdrawal because I hadn't had coffee in a couple of days. And then it turned actually a day, so I figured it was something with coffee. And then the headache got worse through the night. Where it was like I had like a pressure in my head, and I'm like, oh, I'm having a stroke. I didn't know what it was yet. And then I kept thinking maybe it's a concussion. I'll look it up in the morning. So then I took something to help sleep, which it says is okay. Look up on your own though. Don't just go off of what I say. And I looked up the next day, and it was like classic, symptoms of a concussion. It even says that you can have these things. You can get hit in the head, and then you won't feel anything for 2 days later. Sometimes.
Oh yeah, I mean, you didn't tell me about the nausea and the flu-like things. Had I known that, I would have been like, dude, you without a doubt have a concussion.
Yeah, like I thought, like, why do I feel warm? Oh my god, I'm getting sick. Like this all happened. Like the timing just unfolded right, like 2 hours before I go to bed. So I'm like, oh, I'm just probably tired. But what I started thinking was, man, it was hot that morning, so I go, oh, I must have got dehydrated. So it was nowhere in my mind was a concussion until the next morning when I go, okay, it wasn't a stroke, it wasn't this, it wasn't that. Like I probably just had a concussion. So then started doing a bunch of research, and I found a lot of stuff about what to do naturally, because it says not to go to the doctor. Obviously, everybody's their own case, so don't just go off what I'm saying. But it said you don't really need to go unless it gets worse, the symptoms get worse.
Well, I'll to interject here, I have to say that's not great advice because because the reason you might want to go to the doctor is because if you have any slow like internal bleeding in your brain, if it's significant, you want that identified because then you have brain hemorrhages and that's bad. Like you could die. What's that?
The symptoms get worse with that?
Yeah, I mean you would start probably passing out.
You have more pressure in your head because there'd be swelling, right?
Yeah, and you'd probably be passing out too.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, definitely everybody don't. I'm pretty cavalier about, maybe it's not cavalier. Like this is another topic for another podcast, but it's also like I kind of know my body, and I was thinking I just didn't know what a concussion was because I never had one.
Right, and exactly. In your defense too, you didn't realize it. Like, see me, all these things were flying through my head because I had one, and I was like, shit, I should go to the doctor just in case my brain's bleeding. But then I was like, well, I hit this part of my head on like right above the eyebrow, not necessarily, you know what I mean? Like I was rationalizing it, which is probably what you shouldn't do. But I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the hard part. That's where I wanted to hit the ball, but I hit it on the side of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely everybody's check up on your own things. Like I didn't know till the next day, and then by then I was already feeling better than I did the night before. So I kind of, in a way, I guess you could say I gambled a little bit, which is not obviously the best thing to do.
Right.
But I kind of know my body, and I felt internally that it wasn't getting worse, and I was like, okay, I think this is, if at any point during the day it got worse, I would have definitely gone to the hospital or anywhere else. But yeah, it was a weird feeling, man. It's like you're just basically, you feel like you're, I want to say like out of it. You're just like I didn't want to think about any math or any sort of complicated problems. I just kind of wanted to zone out all day.
Yeah.
You're just like this open wire that's just like, okay. Music is a little sensitive. You're sensitive to everything, so you're kind of a little bit shut off.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting couple of last few days, but you learn a lot. Like this is some things, and obviously everybody has their own allergies again, so take with caution. Says two most important things are like right after if you think you have a concussion, is take arnica. Take arnica. Sorry. To take arnica, which is a natural. Let me look it up because I know it's for sprains and bruises and everything else, but it's meant for. But anyways, the other one. Let me look it up. While I look it up, the other one is to take a bunch of fish oil.
Interesting.
After. Because
what's the theory behind that?
Remove inflammation from the brain.
Ah, okay.
Arnica. Have you ever heard of arnica?
I have not.
It's actually an herb. It's like one of those natural. It's one of those little pill bottles they have right by. It's anti-inflammatory. It's a natural herbal ointment and oil applied on the skin as anti-inflammatory and pain relieving for aches, bruises, and sprains. It's a plant, so it's an herbal remedy. Also known as leopard's bane, wolf's bane, mountain tobacco, and mountain arnica. So anyway, it's supposed to be natural. You're supposed to take high doses of that under your tongue every hour on the hour.
Aha.
And again, take with a grain of salt, do your own research, make sure it doesn't cross any of you're not allergic to it, do whatever you need. But this is some random stuff I found on the internet. Cell salts, like I said to you, they recommend melatonin to help sleep because sleep is important, and in low doses it doesn't hurt. But again, check with your doctor. Don't just go off of what we say unless you're one of those internet pimps that like, oh, I'm gonna try this, like go with whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't. The thing about concussions is early on, you don't want to let yourself sleep. You want to stay up. You want to like kind of make sure you're on a natural cycle. You don't want to lose consciousness.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you want to just. It's one of those things where you kind of. You don't want to think the worst. You don't. I was thinking, okay, I'm having a stroke. What should I do if I'm having a stroke? Because it didn't even cross my mind. Oh, this guy hit the ball really, really hard. So it was more like, man, maybe I'm having a stroke. Okay, well, if I'm having a stroke, what should I do?
Right.
So I go, I'll see what happens in the morning. So it was very.
I'll see what happens in the morning.
Yeah, I was like, okay, it's an interesting thing. This is why healthcare sucks in the U.S. You gotta have your options. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I just recommend everybody like, hey, take care of it. And it made me think of this point. I became a little bit depressed, not because of it, but I'm like, man, all this stuff I do, the tongue scraping, the cold water dousing, the Tibetan rites, running 7 miles twice a week, lifting weights, pull-ups, all this stuff I do to maintain my health and keep young could all be taken away by an errant football or errant soccer ball, hitting this one little segment of my spine and brain,
Yeah, that's life, though,
Yeah, and then I go, you know what? But let's say I was eating cheeseburgers all day long, overweight by 40 pounds, sat at a desk all day, had a job I hated. I guarantee you that at least, if not the impact would have been worse, the recovery would have been twice as long.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I've been eating clean since this happened. I've been eating really good, making sure I'm having good protein. Like, anything that my body needs to repair, I've made sure I've had it. And I've been, actually, it's fun because I've been in that weird out-of-it state, but I've also been very clear.
Right.
So I don't have to worry about there being a junk in my system. So it all works out in the end, in a way, like, so don't, like, if you're thinking, oh, I don't need to be healthy, I could get hit by a car tomorrow. Yeah, but your recovery will be better, and it helps so much. Like, if you're gonna dance on that razor, then your recovery will always be better,
Absolutely.
So again, I was thinking about it in a very limited fashion.
Well, the damage can be a lot worse too, because I mean, if you really are letting yourself go, it doesn't have to be head trauma, but for example, like if you're sitting down all the time, eating like crap, not getting the proper movement, like you're gonna tear something much easier than you could tear a groin muscle much easier than than you might, for example.
Yeah, I feel like it's funny because you've known me since I started playing soccer, and I always seem to get one injury a year, and I'm like, why am I getting injured? And it's because it's funny because I play with a lot of older gentlemen. They're good. There's nothing wrong with them. They all play good and everything else, but they don't do that extra maintenance that I have.
Right.
You know, the foam rolling and everything else.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm thinking, why am I always getting injured? It's because I'm playing really, really hard. I'm playing like 90 to 95%. You know.
Right. You have to be ready for that.
And I'm running and I'm always doing this. So I think it's that extra level where I'm actually playing on that. I'm not saying I'm really good. I'm just saying I'm playing hard, which most people at my age don't do anymore. They kind of just take that level down a little bit. They're like, okay, I'm just playing casually and I'm having fun, you know.
Yeah,
For me, it's like the one time a week when I can sprint like a madman, you know.
Right.
With cleats, which is hard to do. So it's like kind of it's my release in terms of, you know, letting my body just run wild. And so I need to learn not to pull back from that, but more like if I'm playing that hard and nobody else is, then it's kind of like a wash, you know?
Right.
Like I need to play within the realm. So I'm kind of like learning to pull back a little bit, but not for performance. Just more like it's a Sunday morning soccer game, dude. It's not the World Cup finals, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean
that's interesting.
That's kind of one of the interesting things you see as you start to get older. Like, you know, I'm not that old, but you know, I'm past the point where people are playing sports. Well, for the most part, where people are playing sports because they have any professional ambition. I mean,
yeah.
You know, like I'm technically at a gym that turns out professional jiu-jitsu athletes, but that's different. But like, you know, you're encountering lots of people who are doing something for fun, or people who are more inclined, like you said, to take it 50% instead of going 90, 95. And, you know, that's kind of like the sort of piece you kind of make in a way that you look at it like, hey, you know, I really like doing X. Like for me, I love playing hockey. Like I would be very happy to be able to once or twice a week lace up and go play, like, you know, even like you said, 50%. And you kind of have to be okay with that. But like if you have any competitive nature in you at all, and you kind of need that release, of course you're going to be pushing it 90%. But you have to kind of ask yourself why you're doing something. And you know, if you want to push it 90%, you know, playing soccer, there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to, I think you have to make sure you're prepared for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My last two, like, let's see, every year I get an injury. Every 12 months I get an injury that takes me out for 6 months. So first it was a bruised heel, and that's because we play on a stupid fake grass court in New York that's uphill one way. So anyways, I bruised my ankle doing this crazy Ronaldo move, which I'm like, I had no business doing. Second time was a mad, crazy sprained ankle that was another 6 months out. But that one taught me, I learned a lot about the ankle. So that was good. That was a good way. And then again, I bruised my heel again. That was number 3. So that was another year. And then right now, this header is going to put me out for at least a week, and then I'm never hitting the ball again. That's a fact. So yeah, every one injury has taught me a little bit about myself, a little bit about New York, a little bit about a certain body part. So they're bittersweet, you know. Like I try to keep positive about it. So it's an interesting thing, you know. Yeah. And I learned way more about brain supplements, fish oil, all this other stuff. It got me back on another supplement that I hadn't taken for a while. So it'll be good. I'm take some skate oil, so we'll have some more projects for you in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's kind of what people joke about is like when you have a certain injury, you sort of become an expert in that, you know, with that body part. And
especially like a nagging injury, like the ankle one. That was 6 months that I never thought I would ever. I'm never going to be able to play soccer. I'm never going to be able to run. I'm never going to be able, because I just didn't have the power, and I didn't have the ability to take pressure on it correctly. And I'm like, okay, so this is severe quality of life being diminished by this injury. So I was like, I had no choice but to fix it and learn buy that weird book about fixing ankle sprains, you know, that's out there that says don't ice, don't do anything. And this was before Starrett started saying, okay, don't ice, don't do anything, because this one guy just this old like football coach. It's like, okay, don't ice, and everybody's like, you're crazy, you know, you're stupid, science. And then all of a sudden, like 5 years later, it's like, okay, don't ice anymore. Like it's just weird. So this
Yeah.
guy like just believed in himself and wrote a book about it a long time ago. So I was like, okay, those are the guys that I'll always take, even if it's bullshit, you know.
Right.
So that one taught me a lot about strengthening the ankle, doing some weird stuff with the ankle to get it back into its rhythm. And shoot, that like 3 months of that, and it worked. And I was like, okay, cool. I learned something about. And then now I have clients with bad ankles. I'm like, all right, let's fix it. This was right about when you moved on.
Right. Yeah. No,
Because
I remember.
I'm like, help me with the bands. You're like, I don't get it. I'm like, I don't get it either, because it's like it's a little puzzle you have to do with these bands, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff you have to do with those bands to kind of get the ankle all stretched out. I mean, the same thing happened with me with groin injuries in the hip. I mean, hockey players perpetually get groin injuries. It's kind of just
I can't imagine a sport like hockey. They get concussions all the time, right?
yeah, it's kind of a fact of life with hockey. Almost, I think football may edge it by a little more, but I think what we're learning about concussions now, we realize how many more things that are like concussions are happening in hockey, but weren't previously acknowledged. Like as in your body going one way, but your head going another. Like you're not necessarily hitting your head, but you're checking me, and my head's going forward, but my neck and body are going backward, and the velocity and the speed at which that kind of moves your brain, rattles your brain.
Yeah.
Obviously not good.
Well, imagine fighting a fight.
Yeah, fights too. I mean, it's like boxing, repeated blows to the head. And but like with hockey though, I was saying though, is like a lot of guys have bad groins, and I did too. And it led to me to research more. Why was I always pulling my groin? Why was I always like by the end of the season having to spend all of the off season like rehabbing and or what I thought was rehabbing? And it turned out, I learned a lot about the hip and the musculature of the hip and the glutes and why you need this, how to strengthen them, how to balance them out. And honestly, after learning that, I haven't had I would once a year, kind of like you with your ankle and your other soccer injuries, once a year I would always mess up my groin somehow. And that hasn't happened to me in a good 3 years now since I learned that, like 2 or 3 years. So, at all, no hint of it.
The groin is an interesting one for me because I've always had tight groin. I've always wanted to be able to do a Shawn Michaels super kick, Sweet Chin Music.
Yeah.
But I can never, there's no way, I cannot stretch, I cannot get that high. So there's something going on that I got to figure out. My hips, like they're better than they used to be, but I can never do that Van Damme, like super separate, splits and stuff. And I've always wanted to do that. So
yeah, those taekwondo high kicks and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, like, guys and girls who were fighters or learned taekwondo at a young age, it seems to carry through. It's actually kind of funny. Like I'll see big guys who, are relatively out of shape but took karate or taekwondo as a kid.
Yeah.
They can still kind of kick like that. Like they have more flexibility than someone half their size. I
was looking up judo places the other day because I think I would like to start there instead of jiu-jitsu.
Judo's fun.
Yeah, but there's only one, and it's it doesn't look. It seems like it's more for kids, so I gotta try to find another one.
I could help you find one. I know a few guys who do it.
Oh, really? Let me know.
Yeah, we can talk off the air. Yeah.
Yeah, don't talk about sports on the air, Mark.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Speaking of sports, you just served up a segue right there.
Exactly.
We're going to get into today's topic. I mean, we hinted at this last week, talking about the idea of there being a science to sports-specific exercise. And that's what we're going to talk about, is that in athletics, in any sport, there's the idea in the training community, the strength and conditioning world, that you should train and condition athletes with exercises and workouts that closely mimic their sport in order to best prepare them for it. And a lot of professionals kind of went by this when it started to kind of become popular, like the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, whatever. It was sort of the default of thinking and how you would train yourself, depending on your sport, whatever. before that, people were just, you know, skipping rope, running, or your sport was your workout, you know. And in recent years, or kind of maybe not necessarily recent years, but also it was always kind of the counterculture to this movement, were people who would say, you know what, you don't actually need to train these things. You just need to be strong. Or if you need to have good cardio, good endurance, make sure you just have good cardio and good endurance. It has nothing to do with the fact if you are a soccer player, like you shouldn't do more lunges because of that, you know, or something like that, you know.
Well, I think it Brooks, like, to simplify it just a little bit easier, and I know what you're saying is like, what is the skill? What skills are the most essential that you need to know for your sport, and what are the ancillary things around those skills? You know.
Right.
And then, but that's where it gets tricky, where you and I know, okay, no matter what, and this is kind of, it's not the same, but it's parallel too. So we have that. What's the skill? I'm doing jiu-jitsu tournament, so you need to know jiu-jitsu, right?
Right.
Ancillary stuff is conditioning, strength, blah blah blah, right? Conditioning, strength, equipment surround that little, the planet, the universe, the center of the universe is jiu-jitsu. The other stuff are satellites around the planet, right?
Right.
And then parallel to that, you have what do we know about the individual that's doing jiu-jitsu? Are they sleeping? Are they eating right? Are they drinking enough water? All the stuff that we train, right? You know what I mean? Like, those are all part of the same world, but separate, but
Right.
equally important. So, can I go join a jiu-jitsu tournament tomorrow knowing no skill? Can I physically join? Yes. Will I get destroyed? Yes. Will I probably get hurt? Yes. So, I can't do a jiu-jitsu tournament unless I learn the skill of jiu-jitsu, right?
Right.
Now, the ancillary stuff is where it starts getting murky. How flexible do I need to be? How how much cardio do I need to have? Like, this is all stuff where you can answer that. So I can see where people get lost, or I'm not going to say lost, but do you think like we were talking about Carlos Condit doing conditioning, or Clay Guida doing his mad, crazy circuits, right?
Right.
You think they're trying to save, because it's hard to do. From listening to Rogan, you learn one thing: is people try to. You only have so many hours in the day to teach a fighter X amount of things, right?
Right.
You think the combination is to kind of chop into that blocks of time?
Well, I think that if you're talking about an individual sport like fighting, tennis, golf, whatever it is, I think that you have a point where I think first of all you kind of have to maximize your skill time. I think most of these guys are kind of in a race to sort of just learn everything they can, see everything they can, et cetera, et cetera. I think most athletes don't care much for the conditioning aspect. Like, there's a lot of famous athletes that have talked about how they don't particularly care for the strength and conditioning. It's really all what happens on the mat or what happens with the gloves on, et cetera, et cetera. But I think when you get to a point, like when you mention an older guy like Clay Guida, maybe a Carlos Condit, like there might not be so much that they.
From his picture weigh-in or whatever.
What's that?
He had some pictures recently. He fought recently.
Who, Guida?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
He looks sick. His body is like sick.
Yeah, he lost actually.
Oh, really? God dang.
Yeah. But
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if I understood your question correctly, but like what I'm saying is that I think.
Do you think they do these crazy circuits because they know they have to do, today they wake up, they have to do jiu-jitsu, they have to do striking, and then they have to do conditioning? And do they think like, okay, I'm going to combine certain elements to get that in there? Because even Brock Lesnar had some crazy-ass circuits. You know?
I think, yeah, I think a lot of it is that they're trying to, when you're talking about athletes, you're obviously trying to mimic the intensity of what you're going to do, but minimize your risk of injury. So it's sort of why guys don't spar every single day. You know, it's sort of why you don't necessarily put a top-notch athlete who has a fight coming up in 6 weeks. It's why he doesn't fight the best guy in his gym every day, because it would wear him out. You know, there's a high risk for injury. You know, so I think that they're trying to
Like John Jones, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who knows? I mean, that's kind of crazy. Whatever.
That's great. That's like serious, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why Gustafsson had to drop out, and Cormier even was able to step in. Same injury.
Really? Oh God.
Yeah. So, anyway, I think that that's part of the motivation. I think some of these guys are trying to kind of get themselves mentally into shape. But like I can tell you, if they have decent strength and conditioning coaches, what their coaches are actually trying to do is to prepare their bodies. And especially if they were educated, like in CSCS or maybe went through some kind of master's program at a university, they're trying to get you metabolically where you need to be. So, in other words, like there's a lot of start-stop in MMA and jiu-jitsu. It's almost like basketball: run up and down the court, run, sprint, stop, defend, run, sprint, stop, defend.
Well, like Eddie Bravo said, remember he had his best match or best training when he was swimming?
Yeah, that's what he did before Hoyler, he said.
Yeah.
Before his most recent match. So, like, even if you don't have the knowledge, like even if Eddie Bravo wasn't thinking to himself, I need to train myself metabolically, he's in tune enough with his body that he was swimming and he was like, hey, I see a connection and correlation here between jiu-jitsu and this and how I'm getting stronger and I have better cardio, I have better this. So that's kind of indirectly what when people like jokingly call it like bro science. Like when bro science is right, it's almost because they were in tune enough with their bodies that they kind of understood that metabolically I'm getting myself conditioned to where I need to be. So like if there ever was a debate, and you and I are of course like we can never just make things black and white. We're always getting into like the nuts and bolts.
Well,
like,
only because everybody's so different. You can't just say
right, exactly.
Blah blah. Yeah, like Eddie Bravo. Like I don't know of any other jiu-jitsu person or MMA fighter that's talked about swimming.
Right.
As conditioning.
Yeah, and there's a what's his name? Hibero, the guy that just fought at Metamoris over the weekend. A real old school jiu-jitsu guy, old school black belt. And that's what he does. He does a lot of swimming to condition because he was like in his teens and 20s, he was like a competitive swimmer also. But those are the only two I know of that use it as really really heavily in their conditioning.
I think a lot of it is though, like I've been researching that Ayurvedic body types that Maxwell was on.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to it. I'm not saying it's concrete and it's right, but I do think there's certain personality types, and you've come across certain different types of personalities training. But I think a young trainer goes in, and me, just not young age-wise, just young at the job.
Right.
I was like, you always want to train people with what you want to train yourself. That's a mold you have to kind of break out of really early if you want to be a good trainer.
Right.
There's different personality types, and they all need certain types of training that fit their personality. Absolutely. Now, you're not going to give somebody who's broken cardio kickboxing, obviously, until you feel they're ready. But, you do have to speak to somebody's personality type, not to yours. And I think that's where a lot of young trainers and a lot of young coaches can go wrong, Unless it's like a team sport where, hey, I'm Coach K and I have my certain basketball method,
Right. I think, exactly. I think that there's exceptions and certain people are attracted to certain programs because their skill sets complement the coaches or the program style. So, like, you get attracted to that. That definitely happens in mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu because, like, for example, like Team Alpha Male in Sacramento, like, they attract bantamweights and featherweight, like 135 and 145. Like they don't have heavyweights. Like they work with guys of a certain weight and height, and most of them are former wrestlers. So, there's that, and then like Marcelo Garcia mainly specializes in training people who fight out of a certain type of guard. So, certain people are sort of drawn to it. I always liked what Steve Maxwell said when he was like, some people think that like, hey, if I want to look like a soccer player, I should play soccer. And he's like, well, not necessarily. He goes, a lot of times people get the ideal bodies for a sport or their ideal body because they picked something that their body was just kind of naturally apt to do, and because it was easy and fun, it also made it fun, so they stuck with it, you know?
It's the same thing for CrossFit. Like, who does CrossFit? Ex-college athletes and trainers, and some random people, you know.
Yeah.
But that's because they want that competition. That speaks to their personality type, whether it's competition with themselves or competition with other CrossFitters, you know.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not like that. I don't, you know, I'm more sport, you know, whether it's individual or that, like a different sport, you know. So I think certain coaches get into that mindset, or trainers get into that mindset, and then you just end up training, you know, you end up being really good at like weightlifting and getting weights and stuff like that, and then you come to this crisis of faith when you get that one client that's just a hard gainer and can't put any weight on, you know.
Right.
So I don't know, those things are, I mean, the different personality types serve as a way to make you a better trainer or a better coach. Like, how can I get through this person with weight loss? How can I get through this person with X? And I think what fails is in any sort of athletic endeavor, and I think this is my point to say this is this: whether it's you want to do a sport like jiu-jitsu, or you want to do something like CrossFit, or you want to do something, don't pigeonhole yourself into something that while you're doing it, you're like, make sure it doesn't suck because you're just not in shape for it, but you're like, man, this sucks. I really hate CrossFit, or I really hate jiu-jitsu, but it's really popular right now, or it's what everybody's doing to lose weight. You know, again, we go back to some old podcasts, is find something you like doing and go from there. You know, if you like running, that's cool. But then you're going to find out too much running gives you crazy imbalances. So then you're going to have to, okay, if I really like running, then I got to learn to probably foam roll and deadlift. You know, glute activation type stuff. So follow the path but always start with something that you like. Even if it's ping pong, you know, I'm not making fun of it. Start from there. Oh, how can I get good at ping pong? Oh, maybe I need to do pull-ups for my grip, or, you know, rows for my rotation, whatever, you know, core work.
Right.
Always start for something that you like, because look at you, like, what, jiu-jitsu, you like jiu-jitsu, you wanted to do it, you end up liking it, and then now you're like, okay, my hips suck. I need to get stronger hips. Now you have stronger hips, you know. And you like deadlifting before, you know. Now it's only boosted either one. You like them even more, and you've always liked them, you know.
Right. Everything it complements everything. Like, yeah. It goes back to that.
And that's huge. That's like super positive, you know.
Right. Absolutely. And that's kind of what you should strive for when you're looking for something fun. That, you know, I think ultimately, and you and I have talked about this a million times in person and on the podcast, is just you kind of have to. You have to go towards what you like. That's ultimately what will, or some kind of goal will make you successful in being healthy, or in any fitness endeavor. That you know, don't think you just like. I mean, I know I'm sort of parroting what you just said. Don't think you just have to go run just because it's 5Ks are popular. If you like to run, that's awesome. Go do them. But if you don't, which I don't, because I don't like the maintenance associated with it, you know. That's why I don't run. You know?
There's a lot of maintenance associated with running.
What's that?
There's a lot of maintenance associated with running.
Right. But there's also a lot of maintenance associated with doing what I'm doing. I just happen to like the process. And that's the point. That's the important part, is that if you like running that much, the maintenance is nothing to you, because it'll make you a better runner and you'll feel better.
Yeah.
Like me, I like foam rolling. I like sitting on lacrosse balls. I like how I feel after. And that stuff's good for people who do jiu-jitsu. I love to deadlift. I love working on like the musculature of my back, because anything pulling is very therapeutic to me. So, you know, I
think it starts from there, but you got to be honest with it. Like, if you really like something, be honest with it. Don't be like, oh, I really like running, but my knee hurts.
Right.
And you go, well, I can't do running because my knee hurts. You're not being honest with yourself. You're just being like, oh, like you're following a path and then stop, and you're like, oh, well. You know, if you really like something, if you really like somebody, if you really like a job, if you really like a girl, if you really like a guy, if you really like, you know, reading a book. You're gonna find ways to do these things. You don't just stop. Find a trainer that'll help you. Find something that can get you back on, whether it's diet, nutrition, sleep, all that stuff we talk about.
Right.
You have to keep it honest about it. Like if Mark did jujitsu and then they said, hey, you need a deadlift, and he's like, ah, screw that, then technically, does he really like jujitsu, or does he like this one aspect of it? You know, like it's how exploratory do you get with it? You know, that's something that you kind of have to.
Well, that goes back to your. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Look.
That goes back to your earlier point of when you ask how exploratory to get.
Yeah.
It's how much of a percentage do you want to put into it? You know.
Yeah.
Because in jiu-jitsu, in every sport, in every activity, there's varying degrees of how involved you want to get, and they all involve different commitment levels. So, you know, if someone tells you need to deadlift more if you want to be able to do this pass or this throw in jiu-jitsu or be able to break this hold, you know, if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to break that hold. But that just means maybe you just go to class to learn self-defense. Maybe you just go to talk and move your body and roll around a little bit, keep your spine healthy. That's fine too. But you have to know why you're there, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's like that's why we rail against I rail against Soul Cycle, because it's like if people just told me, you know what, it makes me do I have the utmost respect. Like I had a client today, she's like, I'm doing Soul Cycle, and this is why I like it. I like it because it pushes me harder than I would push myself, and I'm like, that's cool. I can respect that.
Right.
Don't tell me you like biking indoors. Don't tell me you like loud music. Don't tell me, you know, you like being hunched over. You just like the fact that they trick you into doing intervals, which I'm fine with.
Right.
You're being honest with me. You're telling me that. But the other part of the bullshit is you're crouched down on a thing, and then you're also crouched down at a desk for 8 hours. So I go, you got to realize that you need to do a bunch of stuff to undo all that crap, you know? That's the exploratory truth about Soul Cycle. Again, I don't hate it because it's a way for people to do intervals, but if you don't do anything to balance out all that crunched and forward and hunchedness that you're in, then it's bullshit. You're tricking yourself. You're lying to yourself. And they're essentially lying to you too because they don't give you the balance to that.
Right, exactly. And you're going to end up doing more damage, sadly, you know?
Yeah, that's what gets to me is like it's not a complete program.
Right. And
so that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to kind of pull it back to the athlete stuff and you know, incite some controversy here too, it's why and people might try to dispute it, but you need to show me an example. It's why any smart athlete doesn't use CrossFit as the main programming of their conditioning, because it's not specific enough, and the likelihood of injury is so high that anyone who makes their money with their body is not going to put themselves at that kind of risk, you know?
No, I agree. I think I see what you're talking about, and I think it's good. It's just working. It's working out to be competitive at working out. That's what CrossFit is. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, you're right. It's just not a main. Don't like Navy people use it or anything like that. I know a lot of military people like it after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know to what degree they've incorporated it within the service, like for active members, but you know, I'm sure guys do it, you know, when they're working out on their own time, like on bases and whatnot. I'm sure they download WODs, and I'm sure some of them have taken classes outside. Some of them might even be certified, you know, and then they're in the weight room. I mean, I know. I shouldn't say I know, but I gather, considering the way that you hear guys take supplements in the Army, they're not really managing your downtime. So it's like if you're going to go work out on your own time, they're not going to tell you what you can and can't put in your body and what way to work out in the Army. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic.
Right. I mean, one of my
program. Go ahead.
One of my clients was actually someone in the service, an active member, one of my longtime clients, who needed to do a pull-up and couldn't. It was a woman, and they were changing the standards for the Army for women, and they had to be able to do pull-ups. They never used to have to.
How many, do you know?
I don't recall how many she had to be able to do. I
That's
had to get her to be able to do 10, and she couldn't do any. And we got her doing pull-ups, and it was cool. You
yeah,
know, we had a goal, a time frame, and a lot of it because she was so strong was that, uh, as a bit of an aside, it was all recruitment and just learning how to manipulate your body, your own
yeah,
body weight. Because most people think if you've never done a pull up or don't know how to do one, you're always going to just try to use your arms. But really, what you need to do is get your back in the right alignment and really get your lats into it and really angle your body in a certain way that maximizes the amount of large muscles that go into pulling. And that's the
negative
hardest.
is very important on those.
That
Eccentric,
yeah,
eccentric, like jump up. That's what DeFranco does. You jump up, 5 seconds down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Jump up, 5 seconds down, 1, 2, 3. Just a crap load of those.
and inadvertently that teaches you how to pull up, and that's.
Yeah, it's a weird push-ups too for girls. Same thing. 5 second negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's very weird.
You're absolutely right. Push-ups are another one. But yeah, I mean, to bring it full circle with the athlete thing is, the reason that it's tough to say like what the right course of action is for how to train yourself is that so many people are different. Like you said, you might have someone who loves doing jujitsu, but like has tight groin, hamstring, whatever, and you have to figure out why. And if you know from listening to us or if you know about this stuff, you know that tightness will usually imply some type of weakness or maybe some kind of knot that's disrupting you from even being
Yeah.
able to have full range of motion. So you and your trainer would need to address that. But then secondly, too, the other big thing about sport-specific exercise is that, like we said, it's about metabolically conditioning yourself, but it's also there's definitely a bit of truth to it of like, all right, well, if you're trying to get strong, any strength exercises aren't necessarily going to hurt. So in that sense, you could be in the camp of, well, we're just trying to get you strong, so just bench press, deadlift, squat, whatever. But you're also not going to um, turn an endurance athlete into a power lifter because it's not the metabolic system you'd want to train if you were in that sport specific school, but it's also like, what does that do for them, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What does that do for your sport? It doesn't mean that like if you're a pitcher you have to do like this type of thing. And people at home can't see me, but yeah, it might help in terms of your flexibility, not necessarily strength, but just durability. So,
Yeah, I think when you get to level S sports with high levels of skill, yeah, you have to top load that skill set into the majority of your workload. And then it goes in that, off season, preseason, during season. There's good books on that. Periodization training for athletes, Tudor Bompa, it's a good book. There's a lot of stuff that you can get into, but yeah, like a high level skill, yeah, if you're not doing the thing that you need, if you're not shooting a basketball, 90% of the time you're gonna suck at basketball.
right, exactly. And you know what? Not to parrot Steve Maxwell again, but I am, is that, like he said, if you like a sport, your conditioning should be to prepare you for that sport in terms of giving you the ability to do the sport. And he
Yeah.
said that's how you should think about training in your own life. That if you are a mother of 3, you're married, and you have a full-time job, your workouts need to support your lifestyle. So it means that you're probably going to want to do yoga. It means that you're probably going to need meditation. It means that once a week you might need to kick your ass a little bit. But it's something to give you vitality for your life if your life is your sport or if you choose to do a certain sport. And I can personally attest to it too. Like the weeks that if I ever get lazy in my conditioning with jiu-jitsu, I feel it because it means I didn't foam roll right, so I'm more knotted up. It means that I didn't I didn't do enough pull-ups that week because pull-ups can be very therapeutic to your lats, your shoulders, whatnot. You'll feel it, You're not doing your pre-squat hip openers and all that stuff. Your hips will be tight, And that's kind of how you should treat it, is that if you're stressed out, if you're tight because you worked late, you didn't eat great, had to pick up the kids, and barely had any time to yourself, you know what? That 45 minutes to an hour that you're going to have the next morning that's your workout, means that you probably should go do yoga. It means that you should do something that's going to better prepare you to take on another day like that. Because if you keep accumulating days like that, that's when disaster strikes. And to make the analogy to sports, that's when you get an injury, a season-ending injury.
No, agreed. I agree. Like it's a matter of, it's again, mindfulness. Know your body, know what sport you do, and go from there. And then do something you like. If you're not an athlete, doesn't mean you can't listen to this podcast. But right now, this episode, it just means, all right, what do I need to do for my body at this point in time to get it healthy? One of the points I wanted to make before we ended is that if you're an older person that's never done a sport, 35 and getting older and older and older, I think it's essential that you start treating your age, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I just mean in a positive way. I find that with my older clients, over 35, they need to treat themselves as athletes more than a younger person does.
True.
I'm talking about just basic stuff. They need to be on the foam roller 2 to 3 times a week. They need to be doing heavy lifts. They need to be doing a very detailed program to maintain their health as they age. So I find like a lot of my clients that are older, I'm like, you're basically an athlete now. You're an athlete. You're anti-aging. You're an anti-aging athlete.
Right. Absolutely.
We got to keep you mobile. We got to keep you so that you don't get a hunchback. We got to, any sort of thing that goes on in your knees because you're sitting so much or whatever we go. You're basically an athlete. You're foam rolling. You're lacrosse balling. You're doing deadlifts. You're probably going to be more fit than you were when you were 26, 27 years old. I just find that treating them like an athlete gives them more purpose, and it makes them see their body in a way that I'm not just this old aging person. I'm like, I can get a lot of range of motion, and I don't have to end my sort of anything sport just because I'm X years old.
Absolutely.
So again, don't think of this episode as just for people who do jiu-jitsu or just for people who do CrossFit or play basketball. This is for you as like a person who's getting older. You can just be like, hey, I don't want to age in a crappy manner where my body's just like this beat up piece of meat. You can fix things. I didn't start fixing things till I was 35. Seriously started fixing. In fact, I thought I knew about health when I was 32, and I probably damaged more by just making myself this tight little ball of muscle. And then finally, as I get older, I'm like, oh, okay, this is health. A big chest does not equal healthy. It might indicate that somebody is healthy, but it doesn't end all be all. It doesn't mean that that's 100% the truth. So.
Right.
Yeah, stuff to think about, people. We've given you a lot of stuff to think about.
Indeed.
And as you're thinking about these things, hit us up.
Yeah, if you have questions about what's going on in your journey currently, or what's going on in your like you were saying, like being an athlete of anti-aging, whatever it is, let us know. That's what we're here to help for. I help people all the time at the gym, at the jiu-jitsu gym, at my gym, the clients we train. That's what we do. This is how we make our living and how we have fun too. So.
And we do the podcast so that we can hit more people.
Exactly.
So it's not just the people that we see on a daily basis or people that we interact with. We want to start the ball rolling in your brain about health, as opposed we want it to go to your body, but we want to start thinking like, how do you conceptually think about these things that people kind of just outsource to SoulCycle or outsource to CrossFit or outsource to 5Ks. Well, put some critical thinking in for yourself and realize why you're doing it. What is it doing to your body? What's the after effect of this workout? Go from there.
Absolutely. And then we also do this so Freud can make fun of whatever shirt I'm wearing that day.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. In front of your face.
Right to your face.
Nah, it's all good, kids.
Yes, indeed. Well, if you want to get in touch with us, having said all that, functionalmeatheads@gmail.com, or go to our website, functionalmeatheads.com, or hit Froy up at funmeatheads on Twitter.
Yeah,
and,
hit us all up. Read those articles. We put some good stuff up there, man.
Yeah, definitely. And
Although it looks like we're bots, but we're not.
definitely not bots. We can throw in some trash talk from time to time to show that we're not bots or something.
Like, hey, at SoulCycle, you suck.
Oh, that's a great way to make friends.
Hey,
Yeah.
at CrossFit, you suck.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, do that, people. You can download us on iTunes and Stitcher, as you know, if you're probably listening to us. Until next week, we'll talk to you later.
Watch regular show.
Yes, indeed. Watch regular show, and it's time. It's time for the woo off.
It's time. I'm angry. It's time.